of expertise is community medicine, clinical research, bioethics, and research integrity. He's a leader and teacher, and he's the current head of the Department of Public Health at ERA Specialist Teaching Hospital, and he's also a lecturer at the same department at the Ambrose Ali University, Ekpoma, Edo State. He had his basic medical education in 2004 from the Ebonyi State University, and he got his Master of Public Health degree in 2007 from the University of Benin. He enrolled in the residency program in 2010 and obtained his prestigious postgraduate fellowship from the West African College of Physicians, Faculty of Community Health in 2015. His interest in leading capacity building in medical research continues to make him a lifelong learner. And in the past, he has acquired leadership and technical competencies in public health, in bioethics, in management, and in teaching. Our speaker is also a member of several international bodies, amongst which include the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal Society for Public Health. He's also a full member of the Nigerian Institute of Management. He is a certified IRB professional. He is a 2016 fellow of the Western IRB Copernicus Group, and he is also a certified trainer in the virtue ethics approach in research, integrity, and ethics. He's also a member of CRIMA. Currently, he's also studying clinical trials, methods, and management at the prestigious London School of Medicine. He's facilitating this webinar to share his experience as a research ethics and integrity professional. And he was once, or he was a pioneer research ethics administrator and acting chair of the ERA Specialist Teaching Hospital Research Ethics Committee. He's also the pioneer and head of Research Ethics, Integrity and Compliance Office at ISTH, and is an active member of the Africa Research Integrity Network. He was also an assistant editor of the Journal of Community Health and Primary Health Care. He's also a member of a faculty journal at the Ambrose Ali University, and is currently a guest editor of some international journals. He co-founded the Pandora-ISTH Virtual Research Clinic with his mentor and supervisor, the PI of the Pandora-ID.net ISTH. He's currently researching the use of illustrations and arts in communicating research and bioethics. He believes that cultivating scientific virtues is necessary to gain trust in science, but it must be communicated to learners using appropriate engaging tools. He's also the innovator and the author of the Virtue Clock. For those of us who are here, it's something that we are excited about and something that has helped researchers to always remember virtues in health research. So I think we are privileged and greatly honored to have with us our speaker here, Dr. Chiedozie G. So without wasting much time, I'd like to just invite him as he comes up to take this beautiful talk. Dr. Chiedozie G, you're welcome, sir. Please take the floor.
Thank you, the moderator, and joining to greet everyone coming from every part of the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm sure you're going to be learning some things with me. I will be sharing my experience or what I call perspectives to correction in science publishing. I would like to share my screen now. Please could you enable screen sharing? Okay. Can you see my screen? I'm turning to slideshow. Can we all see my screen? Okay. So I'll be sharing my perspective on retraction in science publishing, what it means to me and what it means to you, what it means to you as a student, what it means to you as an early career researcher, what it means to you as a sponsor, as a founder, as a regulatory professional, what it means to you as a sponsor of a research, what it means to you as an ethics person, as a lecturer, as a student. I have some Few disclaimer. One of them is that this webinar is for academic purpose. This is part of the series on research integrity for our institution and wider university community. The interpretation or opinion about cited literature, I'm going to be talking about one of the literature, one of the journals, is mine. They do not represent that of my affiliations that the moderator mentioned. Aside from the virtue wheel or virtue clock adapted from the virtue wheel, all images are from Google and videos from YouTube, and they are for illustration purposes only. And the literature that I cited here in the manuscript, but I use inference as mine. This webinar is not paid and no honorarium attached to it. Yes, because of the topic, I have to say this. I am responsible for any error arising from this webinar, from my explanation, and I'm willing to retract them anytime without shame. Is that fine with all everybody? So this webinar should challenge you or the research community to focus on promoting scientific values rather than flaws in science. It's not about spreading flaws, or someone would say, washing our dirty linen in public. It encourages a positive view about correcting science, especially from early career stages. The curious mind should be challenged to re-examine the culture of correction in our school system, in academia, from kindergarten, primary school, high school. How do we correct science? And how do we reward science? How do we reward excellence? It should also be a way to help the academia find ways to reduce flaws in science. I support the views that retraction, as you may have heard, or correction or amendment may imply an improved research integrity infrastructure or system. It does not necessarily mean the increase in fraud. I will define retraction from COPE's Committee of Publication Ethics perspective and use professional values to describe how retraction should be viewed and managed. Some of the case studies I'm going to use to illustrate the topic. And at the end, you should be able to appreciate the importance of research integrity using the 3 T's et al. In promoting trust in science. Well, let me inform us, not all the facts about retraction is presented in this part of the series. Retraction is bad news. It's not a good news. Wherever you hear of retraction, don't think it's good news. Well, we need to have a perspective that will help us to manage retraction. So the aim of this presentation is to encourage the correction of literature while at the same time discouraging attacks, what we call ad hominem, on the research community, to redirect the science community to the importance of professional values in building trust in science, to stimulate further conversations about teaching pedagogies, to promote the 3 T's in STEM, and I add arts and STEM, to share lessons from publishers like Lancet and researchers about retractions. Lastly, to inspire a global call for a change in the reward-punish system in academic community. So I would like to share a poll. Let me just look at your opinion and your perspective. Please, can we share the poll now?
So the poll will be shared right away. Okay, so this is the first poll. Just know where people are coming in from. So kindly fill in this poll. You just see, have an idea who we're expecting and who are the people on this call. Okay, we have about 10% of people who have filled. So we'll still give it maybe a minute or a few more seconds. Okay, 12, 14, 15, 16, 20% people. Okay. So the results are interesting. We have about half of people filled. So please, let's all try to fill it in. Let's see. Okay, 51%. Okay, so all right, 68%. So for the third question, you can just fill in anything. It's an empty question. So we want to see if that question will be retracted. We'll use our retraction knowledge to deal with number 3. But do well to fill in number 1, number 2, then number 3, you can fill in anything. We'll use it to explain something about retraction. So when there's, I see our guest speaker is excited about this. I'm excited about this too. So we have the bulk of people who are first stage researchers. We have the bulk of people who are Nigerians. We have about 5% of participants who are outside Africa. Welcome you to this interesting section.
I think we can end the poll because of
All right,
time.
that's fine. So we have 75% of our participants are first stage researchers, and only 6% are recognized researchers. Then we have about over 90% of participants are from Nigeria, while 5% outside Africa. All right, over to you, our guest speaker.
So I think we should pull up the next poll, and we need to find out what would a researcher give his money or her money for. If you are supposed to pay for this webinar, which of these processes do you think should take your money? Irrespective of your level in the research process, funder, sponsor, PI, established researcher, mid-career researcher, early career researcher, or student. If you're expected to participate in a program or webinar stage, which of these will take your money? That's one option. Look at the research phases or processes. I hope it's not a difficult question. Yes. I think we should just have less than a minute for this question because of time.
For the first question, 32% of people will be willing to pay for scientific writing, compared to only 4% who will be most willing to pay for research management. 0%, nobody will be willing to pay for research communication. Just only 4% will be willing to pay for research trustworthiness, transparency, and thoroughness. Okay, the number is dropping as the responses increase. We still have up to 30% of participants yet to submit their forms.
Maybe we also need to correct and amend the question on research communication. That is research publication. You know, publication, how to publish research. And maybe we need to or retract it completely. See that we'll correct it and replace it or retract it completely. Retract it. It's talking about publication. You know, if you have a workshop on how to publish your research, would you like to pay for it? Which of these would you like to pay for? In case this explanation makes it clearer. I think we can end the poll now.
So thank you everyone for participating in the poll.
Okay. So the next question. Irrespective of your field, if you were at the undergraduate level or you are currently a student at the undergraduate level, degree or diploma, which of these is most important to you at the undergraduate level? Just take one option. We have a pool for those. If you were or currently at the undergraduate level in your career stage, diploma, certificate, degree, which of these pool would mean so much you will pay for? Okay, so thank you. I think we have all the poll questions now. All right. So I highlighted the research communication to confuse some of us, and you will think that research communication, which is publication, is most important to the research community. But think about your money. The answer from my perspective is number 9. So I don't know how many of you checked number 9 question. Option: trustworthiness, transparency, and thoroughness. The 3 T's are the most important at every level of your research experience, because you have funding to write your research. If there is no trustworthiness, transparency, thoroughness, you wasted your money in manuscript writing. You have written grants and you have gotten funding. If sponsors and funders can't trust you, or if you're not trustworthy, or if your research is not trustworthy, it's a waste of money. The same with all the other options. So whether you're a student, you need to be trustworthy. Your science has to be trustworthy. You need to learn how to be transparent. So we need to communicate transparency through the continuum of research career. And thoroughness has to be taught. If you care about flaws in science, it's because we are not seeing students from the undergraduate level to postgraduates who are thorough. We need to see scientific community or the science community, people that are thorough. So the 3 T's are so important. You can bet your money on that. You can give any cash. And for those who are sponsors of research, you also have to think about how you view these 3 T's. Funders of research, unfortunately, fund the other aspects of research, but don't fund research integrity or ethics. Is the most important aspect. All of these are important, but this is most important. And it looks like, well, happily, some of you chose research integrity, but research integrity or trustworthiness in research is like a little child with a blind mother whose importance may not be appreciated until problems come knocking. Most of us think research integrity or webinars on research integrity are not important. It may look like a small child, but eventually at the end, you will see that everybody says, hey, it's because of a neglect of an important value that research was flawed. We're going to watch this, and I want you to look at this and then use it to ask yourself how you view research integrity. Is it a small child, or that could be a very important child? Sorry. Can you hear? Can you hear the sound? I hope you can hear the sound.
We can see the video, but the sound.
Okay, sorry. But just watch the video. Sorry, we'll go back to this. Wait. I want you to enjoy this one, so I can take a little time to see that we can share this. We can share this video. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's watch it, even if you cannot hear the sound. So this child is inside a museum, and the mother is blind. But he felt that his mother should be able to appreciate what he saw. So in order to help the mother to appreciate the importance of the visual art, he decided to demonstrate what he was seeing without knowing that though he was little, looking very insignificant among the people that are in the museum, his ability to explain, to demonstrate what others came to see attracted the attention of every other museum goer. And that's how research integrity is. It looks like a small child. It doesn't seem important, but At the end, you find out that research integrity, trustworthiness in research is most important. And then if you lack any of the values, you'll find out that every other person comes back to you. Every other person looks at you. The whole environment becomes attentive to what is happening in science, because this little child, though a little child, is very important. Yeah. So I think maybe if we have had the audio, you would appreciate this video. Thank you. So if you don't want to lose your phones, it's important to pay attention to this webinar. Now, when you hear about retraction in science, look at this plug, the visual representation. No professional virtue should be seen as least important. Rather, the relevance may come at different moments in the research cycle. Scientists are therefore encouraged to wear professionalism as a cloak to remind them about the role it plays in gaining trust in science. If you follow my pointer, you'll see that the three T's, trustworthiness, is important in research. Transparency, thoroughness, sincerity. If you lose any of these, you're likely going to be at the risk of losing your credibility in science. Selflessness, responsibility, respectfulness, resoluteness, reliability, reflexive. They're all important, and anyone that is lacking in the research process, you are sure that research will be flawed. We're going to learn from the Lancet. You heard about the Lancet publication of the COVID study in 2020. What happened after it? Lancet learned, and one of the lessons they said, and I want to quote Lancet, prompted us to examine their peer review process to identify ways of further reducing risk of research and publication misconduct. Lancet says, and I quote, "We have made changes to the declaration we seek from authors." And we can see, if I may ask you, what do you think, which virtue do you think or scientific values was missing when Lancet published that study? Maybe your question will come from your own perspective as a funder or a sponsor, or you see that if there is any retraction in science, check any of these values. This is not exhaustive list, but check any of these values, one of them is missing. And I have always continued to talk about the three T's: trustworthiness, transparency, and thoroughness. As students endeavor to grow, learn, acquire these skills, and they will help you with all the other skills to ensure you enjoy a lifetime of transparency and reputation in science. It's also good news for you to know that you can learn, acquire these skills according to Aristotle. What is retraction? It's a mechanism for correcting literature and alerting readers to articles that contain seriously flawed or erroneous content of data that their findings and conclusions cannot be relied upon. I'll be talking about data shortly. There are two areas in retraction or in flaw or in science that you should pay attention to. One is data. The other one is the text. Data is very important. So if as a student you play with your data, you are likely going to have issues with the credibility of that study. So the purpose of retraction from Committee of Publication Ethics is to correct the literature, to ensure its integrity, and it's not to punish authors. My emphasis here is that retraction, the purpose to ensure the continued trustworthiness of science. If science has to be trusted, then we have to correct them. The other purpose is to alert readers of redundant publication, plagiarism, peer review manipulation, reuse of material or data without authorization, copyright infringement, or legal issues or unethical research. I underline unethical research because research ethics and research integrity, they meet to ensure the trustworthiness of science, the transparency of science. Another reason why we are large readers of flawed science is because failure to disclose a major competing interest can also lead to research misconduct. Other reasons are reuse of material or data without authorization, copyright infringement. What is the nature of retraction? Retraction has been increasing since 1970s, but from studies for Livio et al., it is possible that it is not because fraud is increasing. It is also possible that there is improved editorial process, that science is also making progress. To me, I think it's good news that we don't accept anything anybody publishes, any author publishes as cast in stone. It also suggests that science is dynamic, knowledge grows. Retraction from top research countries like the US, Germany, Japan, and China are seen as higher than other countries. And some of these retractions happen in journals with high impact factors. The same way I'm going to say, it doesn't mean that studies from those countries should not be trusted. It may also mean that the quantity of research and publications are more in those countries, and also means that most of the authors who have funds publish in high impact journals. But for those in newer countries or low and middle income countries, or those with fewer research portfolio, plagiarism and duplicate publications are their issues, and also publishing in low journals with low impact factor. We'll find out that retractions are fewer where we have well-developed research misconduct policies. And also, but only few journals, sadly, only few journals have well-developed policies. Chemistry and biomedical sciences are areas with high retractions. I don't know why. If you look at the nature of retractions, when you think about types of misconduct, data is the first culprit. And data, we have the famous FPP. We have the falsification, fabrication, plagiarism. And so some of the studies that we've reviewed usually bring data as one of the major reasons why a paper may be retracted. And that is very important for us, those of us who are in research teams, not to play with your data science or data management. Another study showed data results as major reasons why misconduct happen and data issues. Concerning impact factor journals and retractions, when we can say from what you've seen and what you can see that some journals retract more than others, and the journals that retract more, usually those with higher impact factor, maybe because of improved editorial processes. One of the reasons why retractions happen is because of honest errors or mistakes or research misconduct. But I do not care whether the error is honest or naive, as long as it is error. It is important for us to know that simple error could make your work retracted and then research misconduct. And it is important for us to know that if you are thorough, the more thorough you are as a student, as an early career researcher, or mid-career established researcher, if you're a thorough person, the more thorough you are, the less risk your work is to be retracted. So how do we handle retraction? We have seen different ways retraction could be handled. We have from Babo et al. Retraction is when we have a major problem, research integrity. But when you have not concluded that there's a major problem, then you can have expression of concern. If the journal or the publisher has a problem or makes mistakes, then you can say, well, erratum is what you're going to see. If it comes from you, as an ordinary correction is corrigendo. We can also have editorial notes. There are different forms corrections can happen in literature. Now, look at this paper. I'm sure you can see my slide. We have this paper that says retractions happens from world-class universities. I don't know whether you agree with me. Retraction happens at world-class universities. Then I'm going to ask you this question. So which institution in the world is free? And if you think that an institution is free from retraction, why do you think so? What accounts for different rates across institutions? That may be due to the internal policies of the quest to safeguard their reputations. So how do we manage retractions? What are the processes? One, it must cover a single retracted journal, and the reasons must be mentioned. And the person retracting it, is it the publisher or the scientific community? It may be the editor, or as the study showed, the authors themselves may self-retract. But it's important in the retraction process to negotiate with authors. And that is where you begin. And you should aim at success in negotiating with authors. You have to practice it. It's also a scientific value of open-mindedness and positivity. You don't see retraction as a fact. It is a call to re-examine the quality of your reporting on science. Retraction should be careful. We should be cautious about the wording of retraction notices, because that's where the issue lies. The wording must be clear and informative and acceptable to all parties. Retraction processes should not be targeted at an individual. It should not be stigmatizing to an institution, to a fund, to an individual, or to a sponsor of research. It must be acceptable by all. We should not encourage prolonged negotiations, because if you delay retractions, it causes more harms. So that's why you do not wait for retractions to be delayed, because people do not agree to retractions. But even when they don't agree, go ahead and retract. You don't need to wait for prolonged times. Now we're going to look at some case studies. One, we have cases of expression of concern. Usually it happens when the case is not conclusive, when you don't have all the evidence. So you decide to wait. Then while you wait, as an editor, a publisher, or a third party or sponsor, or an author, you could notify the reader about your concern. Now, we can also have a case of correction. This is not retraction. We are saying we are going to correct this. And you can see, when you have correction, you must title it as correction, and you give indication, what are you correcting? This is the title of the journal or article you're correcting, and then you give reasons. For example, the author found that it was not rigorous enough to use this as loading control for figure 4 and C. You must show the reader that you are correcting this because you are using beta actin, and then you are giving us these images. Now, when it comes to retraction, it is important to also label it as retraction. The topic again, where it was published, and then you should cite it as retraction, and all the places where retraction, the publication is mentioned, you have to send the retraction notice to every available media where the journal was first published. For example, you can see this article, it says, hey, retraction, and then first published in May 2023, and it gives you the DOI, and it tells you what is being retracted and the authors' names. For example, say the authors were not able to provide comprehensive original data for the figures in concern. It gives you the reason why a retraction happened. So correction should also include the reason why they happen. Now, from Lancet, we know what happened in Lancet, but when we heard of the hydroxychloroquine retracted paper, the first thing that Lancet did was to express concern. And you can see here, expression of concern, which is good. And the second is they retracted the paper. So it's an example of different forms of correction of literature. But someone has said that most of the retractions don't, one, indicate the retractor, the reason for retraction, and the limitations in the retraction process. So it is important for us to know that there may be some limitations. And that's also encouragement that all those who are self-retracting should be encouraged. And it's a heroic act for someone to self-retract. Although we have also told retractors or those who are retracting not to abuse the opportunity of self-retracting. How do we handle this? One, how quickly should an article be retracted? Committee of Publication Ethics says as soon as possible. Other studies say 3.2 years or 4 to 5 years. Another study said 2 years. I don't know what your view is. As soon as possible. Because the more the delays, the more the citations, and the more the number of people who act or depend on this finding. And the more the number of people who act or depend on this finding is very, very important for us to know that if we delay retractions or correcting the literature, we'll find out that some of this literature they go to the level of evidence where it could be used as guidelines. We have some of them used as systematic reviews. They get to the level where they are pulled. And then many people trust those studies and they become guidelines. Today, we are not talking about the burden of diseases due to lifestyle. We can also attribute the burden of diseases to fake science or flawed science. It's very important for us to see that some of these retraction, flawed literature find their ways in treatment guidelines, practice guidelines, learning guidelines, or other guidelines. It's very important that we retract bad science or flawed science as soon as possible. Dangers of flawed science. You waste your money, your patient's life at risk. You lose your reputation, your institutions, even the funders, and even your country. So you can see that it's important, something that's widely important that every researcher should pay attention to. Is an opportunity for political players to discredit you or discredit an institution or discredit a country. Well, you know, it causes mistrust. Science trust dies. It destroys scholarship and institution. It gets everywhere. And getting everywhere does not mean that it gets everywhere to a lot of people, but to discredit science. That's why we have to make every attempt to discourage errors in publication. Why do we have hesitancy today? Why are there hoax everywhere? Initially, you could say, well, in science, everything any scientist tells you, you agree. The maths is correct. You can free fall. But over the years, you have seen because of the dangers of bad science, people no longer trust free fall. You saw, like this individual, he closed his eyes and he fell. He landed here. And I'm sure that you're not going to do this anymore because you are not sure of the science you're listening to or the science you believe in. That is why it is dangerous to allow errors in publications. Socrates said, trust dies, but mistrust blossoms. You don't trust anybody, and it's because of bad science. What we should do is to create awareness to inspire discussions. We should start with scientific values, building scientific values, which is lacking. We should revisit our research system in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and in arts. We should not take retraction personal. We should see retraction as a positive approach to building trust. Luckily, this year, Nobel Prize Summit focused on trust, truth, and hope. So demonstrate the importance of building trust in science. And I think those who attended the summit this year, this theme will resonate with them. And the topic that we are presenting here, that what is important in science is not getting the funds, is the trustworthiness, the transparency, and the thoroughness of the science. Retraction, where we know, should be made transparent. We have also seen some authors that suggested that publications should not be seen as monolith. Publications should not be seen as cast in stone. It means that science is dynamic and so grows, and so we need to have versions. And so if you want to handle retractions, don't look at it as something you've published. Students should be seen to understand science as something that you develop. What you knew before changes. So you go back and update your knowledge and update your publications. So from another school of thought, science should not be static. Science should not be cast in stone. Once published, is forever published. If we keep seeing science publishing as casting stone, then most likely we are going to continue to have issues of retraction. So we will start thinking about how we view correcting science, because science is dynamic and it grows. It is important for us to handle retraction or communication of research carefully, because there are many players. Journalists are there, the media is there. Some of us are very good at going to the stage, meeting the press to show that you have discovered a drug or vaccine. It is important to communicate promptly, but it's also important for you to communicate wisely, efficiently, appropriately. Do not aim to discredit science or aim at becoming famous for commercial or political or personal gains. Your communication must improve or promote transparency, trustworthiness, and thoroughness. One way to also improve or support retraction is support organizations that encourage transparency in science. I am not part of any of these organizations like the Top Peer or Retraction Watch, but I think because of their efforts, we're able to see that many journals, institutions are paying attention to the trustworthiness of science. My perspective is this: if you look at the COPE guidelines, the meaning and the management of retraction, or how to handle retraction, lie in the definition. 1, correcting literature. Think positive. There's nothing wrong in correcting literature. There's nothing wrong. When you were an early career researcher, when you were in your KG, kindergarten, primary school, or high school, you were corrected. Before you become an established career, it is possible that you have gone through corrections, because the knowledge you have now is not the knowledge you had before. So we need to look at retraction as something that's normal, something that we can accept, something that's part of us. When you are corrected at the early career stage, students in the university, you are expected to receive corrections. A supervisor or a mentor is supposed to correct your proposal or protocols. Your research proposal has to be corrected. If we have turned our universities to an environment or industry where students don't have their proposals or projects corrected, then we are doing wrong to science, especially when students don't publish their university projects. We should allow students to be corrected, even to the degree of being corrected post-publications. By the time you've learned your basics in science publishing, then we expect that when you get to mid-career level, your level of errors or mistakes in science would have decreased. Then you can see the color changing. And then by the time you become an established researcher, we shouldn't expect flaws in your literature when you publish them. And that is the time we can send money to you. That's the time funders close their eyes and send taxpayers money, because we believe at that level, you should not be seen to be falsifying, plagiarizing, or manipulating your data, because from your early career stage, you would have gone through those basics. So it's a challenge to our supervisors or those who are lecturing or university students or the administrators of universities to look at the way they pay attention to students' projects. It is important that the students learn this at that early stage. Unfortunately, at the late career stage or established career stage, from my own personal experience, we still find some leaders in research whose works are still being corrected. And so it's a challenge. But ask yourself, depending on the role you play in the research industry, do you pay attention to correction? And if you paid attention, was it helpful? If correction improved your skills, so there shouldn't be any problem in correcting literature. So why do we correct all the way? It is important because you know that knowledge grows. As knowledge grows, what you knew before, when you go back to the first study you conducted, you're likely going to update it. Knowledge grows, science is dynamic. So we keep correcting. Even when you are at the established career stage, you keep correcting your science. You keep improving. So the purpose of bringing this slide is to encourage all of us to think positive think positively about retraction. Retraction should not be dreaded. It is a sign that science is improving. Instead of us to focus on punishing, like some people punish, and they emphasize on rules and punishments. If you don't obey the rules, then you punish you. Instead of focusing on punishment, we should focus on providing good environment for our students, good mentors. If I ask all the students here, how many of you have formal mentorship program in your university? We should focus on providing good equipment, good teaching, training, facility or infrastructure, and then our assessment of excellence in science should not be on grading courseworks. Our assessment system should be that promotes transparency, trustworthiness, and thoroughness in science. Now, correcting literature is sign of thoroughness. It is not bad to correct literature. The next step in the definition is alerting readers. Why should we alert readers? In scientific virtues, you can pick up responsibility. I should be held responsible. If I say something wrong, I say that something is wrong. I should be held accountable because lives are at stake. People are dying because they don't have the knowledge. And what you think is knowledge, I have found that is not knowledge. So I have to alert readers for the sake of humanity. Retraction is good. So if we can see retraction as something good and something that protects humanity and protects science, then we shouldn't see it as something wrong. Retraction, alerting you, will also help us to look at the burden of diseases globally closely to be sure that they're not due to flawed science that people depend on. Retraction should not focus on the individual, but focus on the articles, and that's where the issues are. We should be objective and we should be sincere, that we are alerting the readers about flawed science, not because you don't like the person that published that article. The mechanism of retraction is very important. Because of these issues, the flaw in the literature or the erroneous content somehow seem not to be important anymore, because people have paid attention to the mechanism or to the individual that is a victim, an individual that have committed that fraud. In our environment, you can't see any of these journals, but we feel that you have to promote research integrity by, one, becoming a role model, providing good mentorship and other varieties of goodness, rewarding transparency in research process, like in reviewing research. We should have a way of rewarding reviewers and should pay attention to the pre-intra publication phase, the management of research, the management of research misconduct, and pay attention to other areas than publications. We should be able to stimulate our interest, the interest of students in publishing at an early stage. So at our facility here, we thought of journals of university students' thesis and dissertation. We call it Just D. So students can publish in their school journal as soon as they conclude their research. And for those people who are worried about amendments, they may also have Journal of Amendment of Research. This is just our suggestions, but in a way, not to look at amendments as an issue. Final thoughts, lesson from Lancet. I would have shown you a video, but because of the audio, we'll just go ahead. But the video suggests that anyone that is alleged to have committed fraud in science should not panic. Just show the evidence. Just prove to the people that you have the data and that you can prove it. Lancet learns lots of lessons, and I want to share that with you. And this is their lesson from Retraction, and we're learning from Lancet. More than one author should have direct access and verify reported data before submitting to any journal. These days, you shouldn't be jumping in. Someone calls you, I want to include you as an author. and I want to include you as a second author. No, you should be able to have direct access, and the verification should qualify as a contribution to the manuscript. Where there is collaborative study between an industry and academia, someone from the academia should have access to the data and also be able to verify it. Journal editors should require that all authors sign the author statement to confirm that they had full access to data. Data is a very important issue. You should not play with your data, either as a researcher or a research team member. And then you should know that you are liable as an author, irrespective of your position in the authorship, if that paper is retracted. Lesson from Lancet: data science statement, data sharing statement, should now form a part of the editorial decisions. All researchers should include data sharing statements. This should not be restricted to journals that adhere to International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. All editorial committees or review boards, ethics or research integrity should include experts. It surprises me that some of our journal editors don't have experts in data science, statistics, experts in research integrity. So from the lesson, it is important in our universities or as funders to support building capacity in data science, building capacity in statistics, in research integrity and ethics. Reviewers should be knowledgeable, about research integrity and publication ethics, including data quality and integrity. And some of us are familiar with the ALCOA plus data integrity. Your data must be legible. We must find out that the data you are submitting when you are publishing your paper is contemporaneous, it's happening, and it's original, it's accurate, it's complete, consistent, it's enduring, it's available, and your data is attributable. So thank you for this webinar. I'm sure that you gained something from it, and I'll be willing to answer your questions and listen to your contributions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been the most insightful presentation, and I must say, I particularly have learned a lot, and I know most of our guests and most of our invited attendees have learned a lot. And I'm sure you cannot hear it, but I know they are giving you their virtual round of applause from where they are. But this is just to say that looking at this is a particularly important topic you've discussed. I mean, we've seen retractions, especially in the light of coming after we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and then lots of articles came out that period, and essentially there was this kind of distrust in science. And so looking at retractions now, and from the angle you are putting it, it lets us know that retractions are actually necessary. Many times, I, for one, before now, I've seen retraction as something negative, essentially, but it's more like correcting the literature. I mean, imagine a world where people don't make mistakes. It's not possible. So mistakes can be made. So this is literature can and should be corrected, just like you have said. And it's also a way of alerting the readers. So this, I mean, a lot has been learned. The 3 T's, trustworthiness, transparency. I mean, these are things that, thoroughness, these are things that if every researcher puts into practice, it will help minimize the burden of retractions. I see we have lots of, we have some questions coming in. That goes to show how engaging this session has been. Once again, I'd just like to appreciate our speaker for this while I go through the questions. Okay, on the Q&A section, there's a question here. It says, let me just quickly read it out. The first one says, thank you for the presentation. In the event that a lead author and even other co-authors do not agree to initiate a retraction process, even when there are obvious concerns about the publication, can a co-author go ahead with the retraction without the cooperation of other co-authors? So we should take that now.
Thank you. Excellent question. Like I said, those who issue retraction are usually editors, publishers, or scientific organizations, sponsors, funders, but usually it comes from someone suggests and raises alarm or blows the whistle. It could be a co-author, so you can go ahead. But just know that going to report a wrongdoing in science does not automatically lead to retraction. For example, if it's an authorship issue, maybe you are supposed to be the first corresponding or the last author, and then somehow you are not listed as such. It's not sufficient to warrant retraction. So, but it is important that you go ahead and then, but you also look at the infrastructure or the system in your institution to protect those who report fraud in science. If your institution does not protect people who report fraud, you are not also, because of that, keep quiet. What it means that you should follow safe routes in reporting the error. But go ahead, and you don't need to have a consensus if the authors decide not to own up. You leave it with editors. Editors know what to do. They're experienced. And like what we've learned today, most journals are improving their editorial processes like Lancet. And this is something that every journal should do. I don't think I should continue to be a member of a reviewer or an editorial board member of a journal that does not have a policy or implement transparency in the review process. So when you inform them, they know what to do. So you go ahead. I think that helps.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So I hope, and I'm sure that must have answered that. I'll just quickly maybe I'll take the next two, then we can answer those together. So this question says, thank you so much for the lecture. Please, sir, what is your take on students acting as research assistants to lecturers or more experienced researchers in order to broaden their scope of understanding in research, thus reducing the incidence of retractions or rejections? Secondly, are there a specified number of retractions that are damaging to the career of a researcher? I think that's very important. And maybe we can take another one with it. What can be done to reduce the rate of retractions? We'll take these sets, then we'll come back to take some other questions. Yes.
Excellent. Every opportunity you have to participate in the research process, please seize it. And from our plans in Shore Africa, strengthening university research education, from PANDORA-ISTH and from the Ira Specialist Teaching Hospital and Bruce Allen University, what we're trying to do is to inform, inspire, promote undergraduate research. So not being part of the research process will not help you in building trust in science. You need the experience, you need the education, you need the training. So if you are a research assistant, the problem we have with students and lecturers or supervisors, research assistant relationship, that is why we encourage mentorship, because your mentor, if he's a good mentor, will not use you as a student. And at the end, just put you at the level, at the acknowledgement section, even when you qualify as an author. So if the lecturer or the university faculty member is following the ethical conduct or responsible conduct of research, why not? So there's nothing wrong. It even helps you. The more experience you have as an undergraduate or a master's degree, the better it is for you. I started, my first experience as a research student was just after my second MBBS exam at Ebonyi State University. And today the paper is cited, published in Ebonyi Medical Journal. I was a fourth-year medical student. And since then, I found out that research experience is fulfilling, has several advantages. For example, helping you to appreciate what you do as a doctor. It helps you to know how to write scientifically. It also helps you to know how the drugs come on the market. So many things research does for you. So I think it's important for you to do it. Then how do you prevent retraction? We are not here to talk about preventing retraction or correction or amendment. We're here to say that the reason for retraction can be prevented. One of them is, plagiarism. Now let's start with the foremost culprit, that's the data. How do you handle data? And somehow, how you handle data also speaks about your values. Are you a thorough person? I don't know how philosophers will come together with scientists, and medical trainers to help us to understand that you can't be a good scientist if you don't have professional values. So as a student, pay more attention to the 3 T's at all. Pay more attention being thorough. Your university system should have a built in their curriculum, something that encourages philosophy, something that encourages transformation experience, your education, whether it is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or in the arts. You should be transparent. Our system of education is a little flawed because it is about who has the highest grade or who has the lowest grade. And like somebody appearing on Guinness Book of Records, we should look at your ability to express or demonstrate or show trustworthiness, transparency. What is the next one? Thoroughness. And then we have all the other virtues that I have shared with you. If you're a student that's conscious of showing these virtues, or a mentor or a lecturer, you will hardly fall victim of fraud in science. You have one more question. I can't remember that question. Please, can you, 3 questions.
Yes, are there a specified number of retractions that are damaging to the career of a researcher?
Can I ask you a question? Are there a specified number of amount of poisons that are damaging to the body? Is there any volume of, like say alcohol, say there's a volume of alcohol that you should not take? Is there any volume of alcohol or number of sticks of cigarettes that is damaging to the human body? What should your answer be? What should the answer be? Each retraction is damaging. Each retraction. Just the retraction during COVID-19 fueled, promoted, inspired mistrust in vaccines. So many people hesitated and are still hesitating now because they found out that some of the studies that said this, said that, are flawed. One retraction can cost you a lifetime of your career in science. So don't wait for number 2. But what we are saying is that even if you look back at the study you've published before and you feel that in your country, if journals improve their editorial practices, your work may be retracted. Why not stop today and start living a life of trustworthiness, transparency, and thoroughness?
Well, thank you so much. I think this conversation is very important to have. Retractions, just like you've tried to explain, it's really damaging. And even though it does not happen immediately, it can happen many years after. So one may publish now, and there are some things flawed about the science, about the data, and it's later on till the retraction comes. I remember the story of the popular Andrew Wakefield's, who there was a link between MMR vaccine then and autism. And so because of that, for a long time, it was not until about 12, 13 years after, before his paper was retracted. It was also in Lancet at that time. And you can imagine that's, in fact, as it largely ended his career and all of that. So we've had series of retractions coming, even to establish researchers much later on. So these things are important: data, the different things that have to do with thoroughness. I mean, if there's anything I'm taking, those 3 T's are things that I really must consider as a researcher, and every other person must consider. So thank you very much for those answers. I think we'll just take maybe the last.
Can I say something? Well, if we still have time, we allow the students have been speaking. We allow others, maybe people from, some people may be experienced, but I want to say something. What I see most of the time, and I'm happy with Retraction Watch and other websites that report flaws in science, but some people take personal the retraction process. Sometimes, or most of the time, if what you see on the news or the printed media or digital media is, hey, one high-profile professor or a work from WHO, then emphasis is lost. The fact the focus is lost. The focus goes to WHO or goes to the leading universities like Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge. That is not what it should be. You have seen some case studies I shared with you. What is important is the mistake, the error, or the fraud. Highlight the fraud, then add the names of the authors. For some of us, enjoy bad press. You publish the author's picture. You publish the university. You publish the NGO or the international organizations. And you think you are helping science. Like you say, it has a multiplier effect. You are destroying trust in science. We are not covering any institution that commits fraud on a large scale. We're not covering any researcher. We're not covering any funder. All we're saying, don't lose the focus. The focus is alerting the reader about a flaw, not about an individual, not about WHO or Harvard or Stanford, an institution, or Nigeria, or a country in Africa. And that's why some people feel that researchers coming from my own country or from Africa should not be respected because of the same bias. When studies come from this part of the world, people don't respect them. And that's why many journals keep emphasizing, or many editors, or even university community, you must publish in a high impact journal. They ask them, what provision have you made in your university to ensure that researchers, students, master's degree, PhDs are able to publish? Where have you left your journals? Faculty journals should be promoted. All that we need to do is to improve the quality of our editorial process. And that is why today it's difficult to even become a professor. I saw a requirement for lectureship in one university. And one of the criteria is number of impact factor their journals, their articles have attained. In my country or in my, I'm asking themselves. So yes, this is good. Journal impact factor is very, very good because they hire the journal, they hire the review quality. But let's go back home. Let's go to our country, our institution, and improve every journal that a department of faculty publishes. And let's encourage the editorial members to hire experts. The same thing goes with ethics committees. From my experience and knowledge I have in ethics, I find that some people don't value expertise, professionalism. Some just decide to hire anybody to be on their committee. Tell me about your ethics committee. Tell me who is there. And I can tell you that maybe your review process is faulty as well. So it is important for us to look inward, not to compare ourselves with the global community. While we harmonize the standard for science, we should also look back at infrastructure. And I would like to say this in case I forget, that funders should not just fund scientists based on volume of papers. They should fund scientists that have interest in improving the quality of science. I don't know how EDSTP, WHO, NIH, Bill Gates, and other funders are going to do this. But I think it is important for us to know that any funding to improve research integrity worth every kobo, worth every dollar, every pence. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll just, so the last few questions we have, we'll take all of them together because of our time, so that in the next 5-10 minutes, we'll be out of here. I know we can, this is a discussion we can have for a whole day, for whole weeks. It's a very, very important conversation to have. So the next question here says, is it possible for a paper which was retracted due to flawed science, is it possible for it to be unretracted based on new findings in science that support those findings? That is, the paper was retracted, but now new science has been uncovered or discovered supporting those retracted findings. Is it possible? And has that ever happened before? We'll take the next one. Maybe you can we can take some together. The next one says, when should the issue of research integrity be dealt with in students? Another one says, the third one is closely related to the first one. It says, can a work which was retracted be published again? So a work has been retracted, can it be published again? And if so, what is the condition for it to be published again? Maybe we can take those questions for now.
Excellent questions. That shows you paid attention to this webinar. Retraction is not the end of your road. From the webinar, we find honest errors, naive mistakes as reason for retraction. And the editor, the publisher, someone brings it to your notice. The next thing you should do is go and correct those errors. That's why correction is a virtue. And so when it's corrected, then you publish. But every retraction that has been published, irrespective of the versions, if you find something new, will still have a link or a cross-reference or a digital object identifier showing that this paper was once retracted. That's why some people believe in versioning system for articles. So the fact that your work was retracted does not mean that it's the finals, but if it is from misconduct, most likely it's not going to be because you have updated knowledge. And so you cannot update knowledge or science that was flawed because of data manipulation. So I wondered what knowledge would transform data manipulation to a transparent and trustworthy science. But if it's because of honest errors, for example, some of you students, you have published a paper as an undergraduate, and by the time you are at your PhD or postdoc, you discover there are new ways of it. That's why you have updates. So you can have updates to a paper that has been retracted, but that retraction has to be linked to subsequent updates. The public must be made aware that this paper that is now being republished was once retracted. In fact, it follows every version of that paper, whether in print or in the internet. So you can publish depending on the reason, but it's usually not a very good experience. And that's why we emphasize on preventing retraction in the first place. Now, what I mean preventing the causes of retraction, that thinking what happens post-retraction. We advocate anywhere in the world, the North and the South, that research integrity should begin from the very first stage, from the university, from the entrance to university. What is research integrity? Like I've used the virtue club to describe it. It should not be something that comes in when you are the final year level. So it's challenging to say that many PhDs, they have issues with some aspect of research integrity. For example, data integrity. It's possible that some of you are hearing about data integrity for the first time. So research integrity should begin from final year, like say from cradle to what? The grave. It must not be taught only at the final year. It should be taught from year 1 to the final year to master degree level, diploma, master's, PhD, and postdoc. Integrity is what is at stake. Taxpayers' money is important. And so for you to trust science, integrity all the way. Remember the pool? What is important at every stage is research integrity. So every university should make sure that in their system of research, capacity building, they have in the curriculum a training, education, or whatever exposure or workshop on research integrity. It's not just one-stop shop or sort of 1 hour, gate crash, and then that's all. It should be something that continues. Even if you don't want to teach it as rule-based program, you can teach it as if you're teaching philosophy. You can teach it as if you're teaching virtues, or you use the virtue ethics approach. You talk about transparency, you teach transparency. However, you're going to engage the students to teach them. I tried to use some clips, but sorry, it didn't play. You teach trustworthiness. You teach, what's the other one? Thoroughness. So I am teaching integrity, teaching professional integrity. It also means you're teaching academic integrity. It also means you're teaching research integrity. So I think the question should be also, when is integrity, teaching integrity important in academia? When is integrity important? When you saw the clock, did you see any part of the clock or any time where integrity is not important? If it's important this afternoon in my country, it's important anytime, anywhere in the world. And it's important at any level in your research career, early career research stage, mid-career research stage, and late career or established stage. I don't know whether I've attended these questions.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The questions just keep coming in, but I think we'll just have to put it here. So, I mean, all we are talking about now, there's a lot to be done on research virtues, research integrity, having virtues. And if we listen very well, one of the things we said about our speaker today is that there's a virtue clock he innovated and established, is the author of that, and talks about, you see this wheel, all of the research virtues for researchers to have. And we've discussed some of them here. The 3 T's are part of it. We've discussed responsibility. We've discussed lots of virtues that once researchers put these in mind, it helps to answer many of these causes of many of these things that cause articles to be retracted. So I think it's really very important for us to bear all of these virtues in mind. I would have shown us the picture of our virtue clock, but you may not be able to see it, but it's somewhere over there. It just shows us the difference. It's like a clock showing us the different wheels, showing us all of the different virtues we talk about. So right about now, I think we'll just be ending it here, but there's something, I just want you to speak to this because I think this is important. There's just this one point I want you to speak to, maybe in 30 seconds or 40 seconds to speak to this, and then we'll take our closing remarks and leave. There's a question by someone. It says, some students choose to outsource their research projects to people that charge fees to handle the research and the project report writing. How can we mitigate this trend and drifts? So maybe you can just speak to this. I know this is quite common in some areas, in some settings. What do you think about this? Is it right? If it's not, then what can be done about this?
Please ask the question again.
Some students, they choose to outsource their research projects to people that charge fees. So maybe I have a project, I just give it out to someone, pay the person so amount of money to do this whole research for me. So they have essentially outsourced that project to someone else, and in exchange for money, they are paying for that service. So is it a good practice? Is it an acceptable practice? And if not, how can we mitigate this trend and drift? So that's the question.
Excellent question. You know, this is a series of discussions on research integrity. And if you ask me this question, I'm going to ask you, have you heard of paper mills? You know, these days, researchers don't need to conduct research to become first author in a publication. They pay for it. These days, you don't need to conduct research. You have a full manuscript. These days, some paper commercial journals look for such students. Now, if a student is going to give out a piece of work that he or she is supposed to do, that means the student is lazy. That means the student is already developing that habit of not doing what he's supposed to do. The student is not thorough. The student is not conscientious. So giving out your research, contracting an aspect of your research writing to someone as a student, when you are supposed to do it, if university expects you to write that chapter 1, expects you to write chapter 5, then it is fraud for you to give it out. It is different when you have contract research organizations that meet research teams, postgraduate, not regulated by university, and then the funder knows that you're going to contract the scientific writing or the protocol writing to a CRO is a different thing. But as a student, the reason why the university is to learn the process. Most of my students know that when they come to my research group, I take them through the process. Because we don't just teach, we do as well. We don't teach, we also practice, we mentor. And so we are saying to university community, create the appropriate environment to discourage students contracting their research protocols or proposals. One thing that universities do, which we should not encourage, is that they don't give ample time for students to learn research. In my university, I think we are beginning to improve the experience of students to ensure that they have enough time to learn. It is something, a skill that they will go through life. It will help them in science. They will contribute to humanity. Some universities spend only 2 months or 3 months for students to conduct research, have a proposal, get a supervisor, do defense, and submit. Last thing that some schools do, which we should discourage, if you don't publish your research, is unethical. We should not encourage students to conduct research and lay them at our college shelves. No, it is unethical. You have wasted someone's time. You have wasted the participants' money. Some students even collect samples, blood. You have wasted something. And then you are telling the students, well, I don't think you need to publish it. Your research ends at the difference of thesis or dissertation. It is wrong. We should begin to tell every university in the world, once a student conducts an experiment, he should publish it. She should publish it. And once we don't aim at that, once we don't look at that aspect, we're also encouraging fake science. Some of the issues we have today in the health sector, in engineering, in science, in technology, may have been discovered by a student, but because the student was not encouraged to publish it, it's lying there in our university shelves. On those shelves, we have some discoveries that someone had to go and comb those shelves and publish them. For me, I don't support a student under me not to publish, and students should be given their right place. I'm going to talk about authorship in next series. Students can be first author. If you're an expert, then you'll be the last author. We should not cover students because you're the supervisor and the students are acknowledged. Students should learn how to publish. The research cycle, the players should also include students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We can go on and on and on and on, but I'm afraid we may just have to end it here. And I'd just like to add that I have been privileged to be mentored by a speaker today. And I must say that these are not just words. He's someone who practices many of these things he's talking about. I've been privileged to also join him in supervising some undergraduate students. And I know that he's someone who always ensures that works his students, undergraduate students do, they try as much as possible to ensure it's published. And this is something that I know it's a breath of fresh air, especially in our setting here, where many people just see their students' project as, okay, let's just do it and pass the exams. But it's a breath of fresh air for us to know that there is a student, an undergraduate student at any level, you can do a research work and get it published. So I think this is something that is worth emulating. And I want to once again, on behalf of myself and everybody here, appreciate our guest speaker for doing justice to this topic. I mean, I'm sure we'll be able to discuss this some other time. And in our subsequent seminars or in a subsequent series, we'll still be glad to have you once again. Thank you so much. We are glad to have had this session with you. Thank you, sir. So before we end this meeting or this webinar, I would just like to quickly invite to give our closing remarks, the PI of the Pandora-ISTH ISTH Virtual Research Clinic, to just give his closing remarks in the person of Professor Danny Asogun.
Well, thank you, Dr. Taigbe, for moderating very well, fluently, and I can't thank the speaker enough. I listened carefully. Even though I was on the highway, I was able to get every bit of the lecture. It is really mouthful. It is something everyone should hear. It's a great eye-opener. I'm sure people didn't know when they saw the topic, they were wondering what again about retraction. But we have heard that today prevention is better than cure. It's better to avoid the wastage. It's better to avoid the embarrassment. It's better to uphold the integrity in science. And the man that has spoken to us today is a man who does what he says, as we have said. So I want to say thank you, our speaker, Dr. Chiedozie. We didn't expect nothing less. I'm happy you dealt with it very well. And the moderator, Dr. Taigwe, and of course, the audience, whether you're an early career researcher, a medical student, or somebody, a established researcher, I'm sure we all gained something. And thank you all for hooking on. I can see that we still have over 100 participants who are still glued and listening to hear more from Dr. Ike. So the lesson has been really mouthful, an opener for many people and for students. I'm happy you have been really, really encouraged that even at this early stage, you can begin to practice integrity in research. You can't just go the way of people going to give their project for someone to write for them. That is too bad. So we can all join the force for better science and better research output from our region. So with, as Dr. we have said, we look forward to the next series very soon. And on the platform of the Pandora Research Clinic. This was a very good one. And I want to thank the Pandora, of course, consortium for providing this platform for research capacity, exposure, and building in the African region. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time. So over to you, Dr. Dagbe and your team. We thank Dr. Alfonso, I know he's in the background, Mr. Mark, and Marvin, and the rest of our staff at the research clinic. Over, and thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you so much, sir. We are grateful for this privilege. And just to also quickly acknowledge our YouTube audience, we've had this being streamed live, and we also have people watching on YouTube. So this is to say hello to you all. Thanks for joining us. And we are glad that this has been a success because of you, the participants, you, the attendees, making it as engaging as possible. We are so excited for this. So till we see next time, we encourage you to be a very thorough, transparent, and what's the third thing? Maybe someone can speak up. Thoroughness, transparency, and trustworthiness. So let's keep up these 3 T's and ensure that our research is a research done with integrity. Thank you so much, and bye for now.